Okay, so I wanted to talk about the recent arrest of the Huawei executive CFO. She was on her way to China, had a layover in Vancouver, and was nabbed by Canadian authorities at the request of the United States, which Canada has an extradition agreement with. This all going on with a trade war that is currently being negotiated between the United States and China. So there's all sorts of spin going on here, and no one's taking accountability. Everyone's passing the buck. Our Canadian politicians are basically saying it's in the courts and they can't comment on the situation. Something just doesn't add up. I believe that politicians, according to Leo Strauss, the father of neoconservatism, politicians should be well versed in the art of deception, and foreign policy should be kept secret from the masses. So, there has been stories coming out over the last few days. Someone from CSIS mentioned that Huawei and their 5G network poses a risk to security. I think that's one of the concerns that the NSA has in the United States. There is some, I guess there's no evidence of anything that they have. They've basically just made all these frivolous allegations saying that the CFO was responsible for brokering deals between a subsidiary of Huawei and selling equipment to Iran that is currently under sanctions by the United States. Now, these are not international sanctions. These are sanctions that the United States has imposed. So that's, if somebody wants to honor them, then they can honor them. But if China wants to do business with Iran, there's nothing that is going to stop them. So arresting someone because they want to do business with another company or country is their prerogative. Then there's allegations that Huawei has stolen corporate or committed corporate theft. I believe they did steal or what's the term? They took engineers from Cisco. They may have reverse engineered some of Cisco's technologies. But apparently that was all sorted out in court. So again, what is the issue here? This really doesn't make any sense. And there's some arguments that don't add up. So we're going to listen to a few clips from some of the people being interviewed by mainstream media. And again, there's a lot of frivolous things that are happening, and it's unsubstantiated. And I'll tell you why. All right, so let's listen to this gentleman.
To do the same. We heard earlier in the report they've banned the sale of their phones on military bases. National security gets brought up again and again. What exactly is the national security risk associated?
Well, even, there's a lot of discussion about whether Huawei is some sort of front company for Chinese intelligence or the Chinese military. That's not actually the most important argument. They're the largest privately owned company in China. And if they were able to actually get a foothold in a U.S. telecommunications market through legitimate market means, and then subsequently the Ministry of State Security or the military came to them and said, we want to be able to exploit and intercept those networks. Given the current political and legal milieu in China, there is no way that Huawei could say no. And given that kind of a situation, it's just too dangerous from a national security perspective to allow them to be involved in those networks.
So as you can see, PBS has conveniently disabled any commentary for this video. This is a trend that I've noticed. It's not not everyone does it, but just snuff out debate or discussion, and there you have it. But what this gentleman is saying about national security. So 5G is being rolled out for consumer usage. and they are currently with our telecommunication networks in North America. There's already artificial intelligence operating that tracks activities or trends or your habits as you or your activities, whatever you're browsing, and then all of a sudden you get targeted ads whenever you log into various things that you log into, be it Facebook or what have you. So they're already violating privacy or our proposed privacy, because we think we're going on to these to browse, and that our activities are pretty much kept within our computer or within our cache or what have you. But I always go look for a particular item, and next thing you know, I'm getting ads on my newsfeed from Facebook about various types of things that I've been browsing. So there's a lot of exchange of information that's already going on, and so privacy has never been an issue. So I don't know how they're making it an issue at this point now. And to top it off, there has been major cybersecurity breaches that have happened. For instance, Equifax was their information, their databases were breached. It took them days before they even notified the public, and not a single person, as far as I know, has been arrested. Nor was Yahoo when they had a data breach. There's multiple corporations that have had their information breached on numerous occasions, and no executive from any of these companies has ever been arrested. So why would they go ahead and arrest this particular CFO from Huawei and on frivolous allegations? It makes absolutely no sense. And if they're pretending to have concern for the consumer, well, the consumer privacy is of no consequence. When Europe brought in their GDRP, I think that's what it's called, Facebook moved their servers from Ireland. They moved them back to the United States because they didn't want to pay whatever fines they would have paid had those servers remained in the jurisdiction of GDRP, because Facebook has a business of selling private information to corporations. This has everything to do with some political nonsense, and what the actual reasons are, I don't know if we'll ever know, because the public is never made privy to what's really going on behind the scenes. Could it be all the distraction from what's happening in Europe with the Yellow Vest protests that apparently are spreading to other countries? Not sure, but let's have a look and listen to some of the other people that have been interviewed.
They are used for espionage. They are part of the supply chain, whether it's routers or anything else. They embed stuff in there that could be used to spy against us.
The US, Australia, and New Zealand have banned Huawei.
Well, they're already spying on us anyway. So what's the difference? Why does that matter? They're already monitoring our information. They're already monitoring our browsing habits, what we search. Then they're using that to target ads towards us. So we're already surfing naked on the internet. All of our activities are all going towards someone, and they're basically using that information for profit. So that argument is moot, and it's not. There's nothing to substantiate it. And again, if they're going to go ahead and have all sorts of concern for consumer privacy, then they should have gone and made arrests with the executives of Equifax and other companies that Facebook. Why isn't Mark Zuckerberg being arrested? His company profits by selling private information to who knows who. So again, there's an interesting spin, and the journalists that are inept are basically not asking proper questions. How is it that I'm just sitting here in my living room and I'm able to come up with these counter arguments, and not one single journalist? These people are paid exorbitant salaries. They're supposed to be professionals, and they don't ask any of these questions. It makes absolutely no sense.
From building their...
What does this gentleman have to say? Here's more spin. This is coming from CNBC.
Are at a tipping point in terms of the trade war. Up until now, China has responded to American actions by retaliating in fairly measured ways. But this is a fairly aggressive measure that has unfortunate timing, and I fear that that may tip the Chinese over into getting into much more aggressive kinds of retaliation. And every American firm that does business in China is vulnerable because Chinese laws are extremely vague. There is no way to get official clarification, and so people, in order to do business, have to work in that murky regulatory environment.
Wow. People have to work in that murky regulatory environment. Well, it seems to be working for the globalists because they can exploit cheap Chinese labor, send their products over there, have them manufactured, and ship them back at an overinflated cost because the only people that are benefiting are the executives at the top of the food chain, because they basically have outsourced manufacturing. They've outsourced labor to a cheaper market, and China benefits from that, of course, so that they can take those products and sell them back to people in the West, in North America, with huge profit margins, because the savings that they're making by shipping these products and having them manufactured over in China aren't being passed on to the consumer. And they're all for all this and working within these murky environments when there's money to be made. And as for murkiness, well, how is it when you're just flying and you've booked a layover flight in Vancouver, and next thing you know, you're being thrown in jail? Unsubstantiated charges. There's frivolous charges about a U.S. Sponsored sanction that's not recognized internationally. So, it doesn't make any sense. The pot calling the kettle black here. What else does this guy have to say?
And the Chinese can crack down quite easily because those laws are vague and they can interpret them however they want.
I'm sure that you heard Elon Mui's commenting of Josh Bolton's knowledge ahead of time that the arrest was happening and going into the trade talks. Does this cast negotiations on the U.S. part in a somewhat more doubtful light, whether they can go in and be honest operators and trade talks with China?
That fact alone is very suspicious. However, there's a much longer story here. This case dates back at least to 2011. When the Commerce Department was investigating ZTE, it found a ZTE memo that outlined export control violations by a company that is clearly Huawei. In 2016, the Commerce Department subpoenaed Huawei in relation to export violations with regard to Iran. So these charges, or this case, doesn't come to as a surprise to Huawei or the Chinese government.
Again, whatever, export violations, it doesn't... China is not under any obligation to honor any sanctions that the United States has imposed. They are not... they're not the legislators of international law, so these guys are just blowing smoke here. Yeah, I guess that is it. Anyway, I invite anyone to share their opinion on this. It's certainly a very interesting geopolitical situation that's developing, and I don't understand the rationale behind it. I don't know why there's an epic fail at at our leaders' levels. How the Canadian government has used very poor judgment to become a pawn in this piece, when everyone's trying to, apparently on the surface, as what they appear to be, is they're trying to resolve this trade war that is causing the stock market to fluctuate and to be quite volatile. And it might even now, this might be the linchpin or the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back, creating a recession of some sort. So, or perhaps there's people within the United States that are trying to undermine Trump's efforts. He's not well liked. Perhaps this is something that was orchestrated by the oligarchs. I don't know. I guess I'm just speculating or conspiracy theorizing. But this is silly. This is the most outrageous thing I've seen in a while, and just felt it appropriate or necessary to discuss. So thank you for taking the time to listen, and please share whatever thoughts you have. So one additional item, the spin that we're hearing from the people being interviewed by mainstream media is that Huawei, if they are able to expand into North American markets, the Chinese government would have access through Huawei to exploit national security, and that would present a risk of some sort. Everything right now is monitored. There's a tool that they use called Echelon, and Echelon monitors everything. It picks up on keywords during phone conversations, probably whenever you type in a certain word when you browse. If you're downloading, pirating off of torrents, the tool that's being used to notify the ISP that you are in breach of privacy laws is the relay is used. The tool that's being used is Echelon. So if you're not familiar with Echelon, read up on it. So I just don't buy anything that they're telling us. The whole thing doesn't add up, and as always, we the people, the consumers, are just pawns being told what they want us to hear, and looking at bits and pieces to try and fit them all together to see exactly what's going on at the so-called government levels. Anyway, thank you again, and have a great day.